Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Mo Ray, and this is The Other Side. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, I mean that a lot of media today is dominated, at least media, political media, whether it be radio or the number one cable news network for years has been Fox News. But I like to give the other side of the story, and it's out there. And we'll be talking about two things in particular. We'll be talking about the commutation of Roger Stone's sentence by the president. Even his own attorney general thought that was a bad idea. We'll see how that plays politically. Staunch Trump supporters probably just shrugged it off. But here was a guy who was guilty of multiple felonies and was going to be looking at 3 years in prison. But he never served a day, thanks to the president sneaking this in late on a Friday night. I think if he was particularly proud of it, he would have done it in the light of day, but instead he did it, and a lot of political things are done that way, not by this president alone, by other presidents as well. That seems to be when you do your dump. If you're doing something questionable, you'll let it happen on a Friday night when people are probably preoccupied with other things. But so we'll be talking about that as well as COVID-19, which is not going away anytime soon. And it's certainly not going away because many of our fellow Americans refuse to modify their behavior. And I'm sure you've seen some of that. And, before I get too far along, I got to say hello to Joe Danier.
How are you?
Well, fine, thank you, Joe.
Sure.
And I was just, I don't know, you can't see him right now. He doesn't have his camera on, but Joe's got a tan. He looks like he could be my brother, almost. All right, so anyway, that was vacation tan. Looking good, though.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, but let's get right to it, though. A nice explanation of the Roger Stone situation is, this is clearly explained. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting backwards here. Roger Stone comes later. There's three things we want to talk about. Back to school. That's COVID-19 related, and then COVID-19 itself. Yeah, do you really want to send your kids back to school? There is a full court press by this administration to get your kids back in school, and I've got examples of this. And one is, it's quickly explained and well explained by Reuters, and let's take a look at this.
President Donald Trump's demand for U.S. schools to fully reopen this fall amid the coronavirus pandemic is central to an emerging re-election strategy that seeks to resuscitate his flagging support in a critical electoral sector, the nation's suburbs.
We have to open our schools. Open our schools. Stop this nonsense. We open our schools.
Suburbs in key election states such as Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Florida are filled with affluent swing voters, and many feature large, robust public school systems. A Reuters Ipsos poll last week found that just 36% of voters in the suburbs approved of Trump. Among suburban women, just 3 in 10 said they supported the president. Trump's campaign views schools reopening as one key to an economic recovery, allowing parents with young children to return to work. He went so far as to threaten to strip schools of federal funds if they fail to comply. That prompted pushback from some fellow Republicans facing re-election in November, such as Senator Susan Collins of Maine.
I am completely opposed to any withholding of federal funding to schools that for what may be very good reasons, choose not to reopen.
Some parents and health experts warn sending kids back to classrooms in the midst of an epidemic could be dangerous. Nikki King is a high school teacher in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I don't want to get sick. I don't want my family to get sick. I don't want my students to get sick.
Many districts plan to offer a hybrid of in-person and online learning and say they will require masks and social distancing on school grounds. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control issued recommendations that schools test for COVID-19, split students into small groups, serve packaged lunches in classrooms instead of cafeterias, seat students at least 6 feet apart, and use partitions when social distancing is not possible. Trump last week attacked the CDC guidelines, saying they were too tough, expensive, and impractical. On Sunday, U.S. Democratic Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi fired back, telling CNN the CDC school guidelines should be federally mandated.
Well, I don't know how some of you feel about that. I am not I'm not a parent, but I think if I were, I'd have a little trepidation about sending my kid back to school. And it's not as easy as they make it sound. Joe, you are a parent. Any thoughts on this?
We're going round and round with what's right, what they're going to do, and it all comes down to like what the standards are, because they keep waffling back and
Right.
forth on what they're going to be. So we'll see.
Yeah, because and the thing is, the president, even though he's threatening to withhold funds, that's about all he can do legally. The schools are handled by the state and by municipalities, so it's up to them what they want to do. But for the president to kind of go gangster and like, nice school district you got there. Hate to see something happen to it. It's just a little weird for me. I think that should be left. And he always says everybody wants to get back to school and we need to stop this nonsense. Mr. President, it's not nonsense when people are dying. Right now we're at 135,000 dead from COVID-19. Almost 3.5 million now have been infected. That's 3,336,000, give or take. That's a lot of people out there who are sick. It depends on where you live. It depends on your situation. And the same president who talks about going back and how easy it will be, well, he's also cutting funding for some of the testing, which I find interesting because his economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, makes it sound like going back should be easy as pie. I do want to preface this by saying that Larry Kudlow is been married 3 times himself, and he has 0 children. Yet he seems to have no concern for your children going back to school.
I don't see why they just can't reopen with safety guidelines, which are very important. I get that. They have to wear masks or face covers or, personal hygiene, distancing, and lots of testing, which is all available. This is our mantra of guidelines. And if you follow that, I think there's no reason why this K through 12 can't reopen and even the colleges can't reopen. Just go back to school. We can do that. And, you can social distance, you can get your temperature taken, you can be tested, you can have distancing. Come on, it's not that hard.
Well, actually, it is that hard, Mr. Kudlow, because the simple fact is, as I said, the president who you're serving is cutting funding for a lot of the tests that are out there. And this goes back to the famous CDC lie that the president told way back when he said anybody who wants a test can get a test. That's still not entirely true. And every school is different. And I don't know, he's talking about K through 12. Little kids are not going to wear a mask all day. There was even a situation, of course, and maybe you're aware that Disney World reopened as Florida is spiking. It's number 3 in the country in cases, and as Florida is spiking. But by the way, it had a record 1-day total for the country, so it was number 1 in that regard. But so things are going nuts down there with COVID-19. But Disney World is reopened. You just have to wear a mask. And one young man with autism didn't want to wear the mask, so they couldn't let him in. And by the way, I understand, but I don't know, even with the precautions they're taking, I don't know that I'd want to go to an amusement park right now, but they're giving it a shot. By the way, there's already been a couple of people. This young lady was an influencer, and she live streamed her visit to Disney World, and within a day or so, she got sick. So I wouldn't be wanting to go to places like that. But let's go to another. This was, I thought, very good, where you get to look at the numbers. When this is the other thing, they try to compare the United States to other countries that have successfully, they didn't have a bunch of people whining about the wearing of masks. They didn't have a leader who 1 minute is telling you how dangerous this is, and the next minute who's mocking the whole thing. So there's no surprise that some of the people out there don't know what to believe anymore. But I tell you this, I believe that we have a problem, that this is a real disease, and it can do some real damage to you. If you're a younger person, you may or may not die. Sure, you're going to be stronger if you don't have any pre-existing conditions. But that doesn't mean that young people can't die. We've had a kid die in the last week, and I forgot how old that child was, but they definitely died of complications of COVID-19. So don't tell me it can't happen. But I'm not a big fan of Fox News, but I do give Chris Wallace credit. This was on Fox News Sunday, where he interviewed Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, and she makes it sound like it's all so easy, but I think he kind of puts her in her place with the facts of the matter.
And you mentioned earlier about other countries. You and the president have both said, well, other countries are reopening. So let's look at the statistics there if we can. Let's put them up on the screen. Germany reported 378 new cases on Friday. Denmark, 30. Norway, 11. Meanwhile, the U.S. reported 68,226 new cases on Friday. Question, is it really fair? Is it reasonable to compare the situation in countries that have 20 new cases in a day with a country that has 68,000 new cases in a day?
Well, we're talking about schools and other countries' experiences with reopening schools, and it has been shown to be very successful. Kids have gone back to learning environments and have done so safely and healthfully.
But schools happen in an environment. If there's 30 cases in a state and in a country, that's very different than a place where it's out of control and there are 70,000 new cases in a day.
And we're not talking about places where it's, quote, out of control. We're talking about the rule, not the exception. And where there are hot spots in the future, in the fall, of course, that has to be dealt with differently. And I would reference Miami-Dade County, which has a very robust continuity of learning plan that was put into place in anticipation of hurricanes, but it's very appropriate here. The state of Florida has said in the fall, parents and students need to be able to count on a 5-day-a-week in-person school situation.
I have one last question, Secretary DeVos, because both you and the president have threatened to cut off funding for school systems that don't open fully in the fall. Here you are.
If schools aren't going to reopen again, that's breaking that promise. And so why should they receive funds for something they're not going to do?
And President Trump tweeted Friday, schools must be open in the fall. If not open, why would the federal government give funding? It won't. Two quick questions, and I need a quick answer, if I can, from you, Secretary DeVos. One, under what authority are you and the president going to unilaterally cut off funding, the funding that's been approved from Congress, and most of the money goes to disadvantaged students or students with disabilities? And secondly, isn't cutting off funding exactly the wrong answer? Don't you want to spend more money to make schools safer, whether it's with plastic shields or health checks, various other systems? Doesn't it make more sense to increase funding for schools where it's unsafe rather than cut off funding?
Look, American investment in education is a promise to students and their families. If schools aren't going to reopen and not fulfill that promise, they shouldn't get the funds. Then give it to the families to decide to go to a school that is going to meet that promise.
Well, you can't do that. I mean, I know you guys support vouchers, and I know you support vouchers, and that's a reasonable argument, but you can't do that unilaterally. You have to do that through Congress.
Well, there you go. And so it sounds good. They're all saying go back to school, no big deal. But I think the situation is the reality of the situation is different. The CDC has put guidelines out there. The president says they're unreasonable. But I don't know. He's the president. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. But that never stops him from trying to overrule those people. By the way, a related thing. Do you realize the president hasn't spoken in person to Dr. Fauci in 3 weeks? They're trying to downplay. And, of course, if you have been watching us since the beginning here, I said weeks ago that there were whispers that they were going to try to downplay Dr. Fauci's advice, and they just want to move ahead. The Republicans in particular, but I know not just Republicans, there are business owners out there of all persuasions. They want to get back to normal, but we're not normal. We are in the middle of a pandemic. So to say you're going to open your bars and all that, you see what happened in Florida. They tried to do it, and it's been a disaster. You see that Texas, that fine Republican state of Texas, decided that they would not issue stay-at-home orders. And well, when they finally did, it was only for about 28 days. And now the governor of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, is begging people to wear a mask after lulling them into a feeling of false security like it was no big deal. But now it is a big deal because now the hospitals are filling up. Now the cases are increasing. And I noticed yesterday the governor of Florida, DeSantis, gave a press conference and he was heckled. And I thought he deserved that heckling, because just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he was bragging about how Florida had done so great without shutting down their beaches and without going through the draconian measures, as they called them, that some Democratic governors have taken. In the case of us here in Ohio, we had a Republican who acted like a Democrat. He shut us down early. He took it very seriously. And for a while there, we did flatten the curve. Now that things have opened up, some people have just gone buck wild. It's just like, hey, man, I think I mentioned last time, one of my Facebook friends overheard a woman saying, well, I'm glad this is over. Well, this is far from over. And let's remember also, going back to Dr. Fauci, we're at 135,000 deaths. He's predicting by October we could hit 300,000 deaths. But I wonder how many deaths even matter to some people, because it seems that no matter how many people drop around them, there are some people out there that think it's not going to happen to me, or I have an immune system. That's something I saw somebody write. Guess what? All those dead people had immune systems too. And they weren't all sickly people. For sure, if you do have some other condition, you are more likely to be hit harder by this. But don't fool yourself. A Broadway actor who was only a little over 40 years old, very athletic person, I can't remember his name right now, but he passed away last week. This is nothing to fool with. This is not a little flu. And by the way, speaking of that, the president of Brazil, who I call Trump on steroids, he never wanted any social distancing. He would hug people. There was no social distancing. He laughed at masks. He did call it a little flu. And now the president of Brazil himself has tested positive for COVID-19. The people who are saying this is a conspiracy to make the Democrats look good and Trump look bad, I think that's pretty absurd, because the whole world would have to be in on this, wouldn't they? And although our president is not the most popular guy in the world, I don't think we could pull this off. But let's move on. What's the president say about this? And I want you to pay close attention. One of the reporters brings to his attention that a substitute teacher has already died. She contracted the virus and died during summer school. So just watch his reaction to this.
Announced that they are delaying the opening of their schools. New York already said they were going to delay them. Other school districts are giving parents the choice whether to send their kids to school or not. What do you tell parents who look at this, who look at Arizona, where a school teacher recently died teaching summer school, parents who are worried about the safety of their children in public schools?
The schools should be opened. Schools should be opened. If these kids want to go to school, you're losing a lot of lives by keeping things closed. We did the right thing. We saved millions of lives. We saved millions of lives when we did the initial closure. Had we not done what we did, we would have had Mike and I were talking about it before, 2 to 3 million lives lost. But we did that. So we're at about 135,000, and we'll be at somewhat higher than that by the time it ends. And again, the vaccines are happening and the therapeutics are happening, but I'm not even talking about that. So we'll be at a somewhat higher, but we would have lost 2 million, 3 million lives had we not done it. We have to open the schools. We have to get them open. And I think there's a lot of politics going along. I think they think they'll do better if they can keep the schools closed in the election. I don't think it's going to help them, frankly, but I think they feel that by keeping schools closed, that's a bad thing for the country, and therefore that's a good thing for them.
Well, see, once again, the president says that, and he's kind of echoing the words of. I notice that conspiracy theories are really big right now, and I won't even put that up there. But I don't know if you notice that, as I've pointed out many times, the president of the United States has access to the greatest minds in the world. Yet he gets a lot of his ideas or information or opinions from Fox and Friends or Hannity, or in this case, a washed-up talk show host named, a game show host named Chuck Woolery. And Chuck Woolery, well, I guess we can do that. Yeah, there it is, the exact words, and Joe is working for that for me. I wasn't going to talk about that, but then I noticed the president's attitude, and I think his attitude is based upon this Chuck Woolery quote that he retweeted. And is that up right now? Okay, so and you can see for yourself, the most outrageous lies are the ones about COVID-19. Everyone is lying. The CDC, media, Democrats, our doctors, not all, but most. We are told to trust. I think it's about the election and keeping the economy from coming back, which is about the election. I'm sick of it. So the president actually retweeted that. The president of the United States thinks, talk about mixed messages. As you're saying that we're dealing with this pandemic, you're taking this guy's words, he's calling the whole thing a fake. He's calling the whole thing a political ploy. I thought we had gotten away from that. Let's remember also that the Republicans didn't even start wearing masks until last week because they made it, that even became a political issue, and it still is for some people, pardon me. My brother said somebody saw him wearing a mask down in Texas and called him a liberal just for wearing a mask. This is not a left-right issue. This is a wrong-right issue. This is a safety concern that I wear the mask so that I don't spread my germs to you. You wear a mask and return the favor. It's really not that hard. As recently as today, somebody, and I don't know why I always end up looking at WKBN 27's website, but some of the comments will drive you crazy. This person, she thinks the whole thing is just made up and they're making a big deal about it, and she just says, well, you do you and I'll do me. Well, I wish we could let it go at that. The problem is, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't cover your mouth, then you might inadvertently infect me or someone else. You might not even know you're sick. You might feel fine, but you're not fine. That's what we're dealing with. We're still learning about this disease. And part of the discrediting of Dr. Fauci that you see out there is to say that Trump said he made a lot of mistakes. He made a couple of mistakes they could cite where he questioned the effectiveness of masking. Both he and the WHO reversed themselves on their early comments about that. Let's remember, this is a brand new disease and we're still learning about it. So to assume that everything you hear is absolutely factual or may not change later, well, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. Science evolves. Trump doesn't. And I can tell you right now, I saw something on Facebook today where Ken Jennings, do you know who he was? Does that name ring a bell?
It does too. Where's he from?
He is the champion of all time on Jeopardy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, remember.
And he was referencing the Chuck Woolery situation. He said, well, I'm a game show host. I'm a game show winner, and I think I know more than a former game show host. Wear a mask. And I think that's good advice. And I said that my answer on Twitter was, Alex, who do I trust more for $500? You know, I think I'm going to go with one of the smartest guys in America, rather than go with Chuck Woolery. But let's leave that aside. Let's take a look at, let's shift gears here. By the way, I want to say the number here, if you'd like to join. Are you ready to send your kids back to school? No matter where we are in this hour, I'd like to talk about that. Do you think that's a good idea? And, well, we have, Debbie says, hope the day is treating you and Joe well, Mo. Well, it's treating me well.
Absolutely, feeling good.
Okay, and Barbara says, is Barron going back to school? I think that is something that they're not talking about. I know he attends a private school, of course, but, I'll try to look into that for the next program. I really don't like to mess with him much because they say leave the kids out of it, but it would be interesting. I'm assuming that since the president is pushing this so hard, there's almost no way he could not send his own son to school if you're asking everybody else to go, but, sometimes what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. But up next, we're going to talk about, did I give the number?
You did.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll give it again.
Do it up.
330-595-1600. And I'd like to hear what you'd like to say. Do you think it's a good idea? Just send the kids back to school. Do you think that your local school district is ready to handle this? Do you have concerns? So I'm curious about that. But I'm also, myself, concerned about what I see as a miscarriage of justice. Trump confidant, I didn't know he'd known this guy for so many years. Trump has known Roger Stone almost 40 years, so they're very good friends. But let's remember that Roger Stone was found guilty by a jury of his peers. Roger Stone was supposed to spend 3 years in prison, but the president granted him clemency. And let's be clear, that's not the same as a pardon. He's still a convicted felon, though he will never spend a day in jail, although I believe he should. And he made his first TV appearance since being granted that clemency on Hannity last night. And let's see what he had to say.
Now, as we told you, President Trump announced Friday he was commuting the sentence of Roger Stone just days before Stone was set to start a 3+ year prison sentence stemming from Robert Mueller's Russian witch hunt. Remember, Stone was convicted of process crimes relating to 2017 and statements he made to House lawmakers. In other words, lying before Congress. Adam Schiff presiding, the biggest liar in Congress. Now, neither the Schiff show nor Robert Mueller produced one bit of evidence that Stone was working with anybody colluding with Russia. And by the way, as the White House press secretary explained, quote, these charges were the product of recklessness born of frustration and malice. Joining us now, Roger Stone, first TV interview, and his attorney, David Schoen. I would like to say to you, Roger, while I'm glad you had your sentence commuted and you're not headed to prison this week, there's a part of me that is also very angry and very concerned for the country based on the entire handling of your matter. Why don't I just let you say it in your own words, what this has been like for you?
Well, this is the most horrible experience you can have because I see immediately why 99% of the people who choose to plead not guilty and go to trial lose. When you're up against the horrific and deep-pocketed resources of the federal government and these really sadistic, arrogant, politically motivated prosecutors, I had a biased judge, I had a stacked jury, I had a corrupt jury forewoman. As my friend Tucker Carlson said, my trial was over before it started. When you go through something like this, Sean, you find out who your real friends are and who the people are who really never were your friends. You have been a tremendous friend. You have done a great job of keeping people informed, but I have to really single out your Fox News colleague, Tucker Carlson. He took up the cudgels early. He stayed on this case with every twist and turn, wasn't afraid to take on the judge, laid out the jury question. It encouraged me when I got discouraged. He's a man of incredible loyalty, and he's a great friend. He may be the best friend a man can have. So my hat's off to him. And also Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida, who I hope to live long enough to see in the White House. He was a great friend who never gave up in trying to make sure everybody understood the injustice that I had been through. But so many others, Bernie Carrick, the former New York police commissioner, and Charlie Kirk, Reverend Franklin Graham, pastors Mark Burns and Darrell Scott, Randy Coggins, a dynamic young evangelist from Florida, the entire Flynn family, General Mike Flynn, a man who's still being persecuted. My hat's off to all of them because they helped me and my wife and my family through the scariest, most difficult process of you can imagine,
But above all, I must tell you, Sean, based on advice from you and Reverend Graham and the two pastors I mentioned, I really want to thank God, because I was literally hours away from being sent to a COVID-infested prison in violation of the current Bureau of Prisons and DOJ policies, in violation of every precedent in the country where people going to jail or in jail were asking for compassionate release, and in every case, it was granted. I'm 67 years old. I've had a lifelong problem of respiratory problems. I was facing what I really believed was a near-death sentence. So you, particularly Tucker, Matt Gaetz, and everybody I named, my heart goes out to you. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. But more than anything else, I'm grateful for God, because as you told me, if I would rededicate my life to Christ, if I would be reborn, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And your advice was as solid as could be. You said God will never desert you. He will never abandon you. He will protect you if you confess your sins and you walk in his way. And I have done my very best to do that.
Well, so, I think it's interesting that Stone mentions all these preachers. And it's great that they speak out on things like this. This is what I've talked about, these conservative preachers, Franklin Graham and the people, I forgot the other one he mentioned, but the bottom line is, I always, during the George Floyd situation, I always wonder, where were those men of God during that? They didn't speak out about this man's tragic death, but they will speak out about Roger Stone, who is a self-described dirty trickster. He's been around since the Nixon days. In fact, I was just telling Joe during the break, look it up, it's out there, there's pictures of it. He has a tattoo of Nixon on his back. Not the word Nixon. Nixon's face is on this man's back.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That is so weird.
I think it's very weird. But I mean, we'll talk about that. That's the other thing with this whole thing, where we're at right now. I know I'm getting off a little bit on this, but the cultishness of the Trump supporter. Maybe one day I've got about 3 or 4 pictures I'd like to show you one day. You can't see where these are all local houses, but you wouldn't believe it. You didn't see this under Obama. I think I had one Obama t-shirt, and after the election, it was kind of like, well, what's the point? But I see people fixing their houses up. They're almost shrines to Donald Trump. And to me, that is a bit cultish. This is a cult of personality. This is not the Republican Party anymore. That's why you have groups like the Lincoln Project. That's why you have groups like Republican Voters Against Trump. That's why there's yet another one that whose name escapes me. But that's why these people, it's called Vote Vets. These people may be Republicans, but they realize that the party that they are a member of is no longer their party. It's changed into the whims of Donald Trump. And the true Republicans in Congress, the only one that spoke out against Roger Stone's commutation was Mitt Romney, because I think he is truly a decent man. I thought he was a decent man when he ran versus President Obama. But he's the only one. The rest of them are notably silent. And you got to wonder about that, because this was highly irregular, the way this was handled. And as I said, according to most sources, even Attorney General Barr did not want him to do this, and a lot of his staffers advised him against it. But Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump wants to do. Quickly, though, to a question I got from, hold on just a second here. And this is an independent thing called S-Run Media. But somebody asked a question about, let me scroll down. I believe that was, hold on, where did she go? Well, I lost her. But that question was asked. Oh, there it was. Barbara asked me, is Barron going back to school? Well, here's an interesting thing. And once again, see, the president just makes these blanket statements where we live in a country where there are all these individual school districts, different states have different rules, and la-di-da, let's see. Okay, there we go. Barron currently attends St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Potomac, Maryland. As No More Mr. Nice Guy blog points out, the prestigious school is still deciding on what the fall semester will look like for students. St. Andrews might offer a mix of on and off campus learning, which is precisely what the Trump administration says is not acceptable. Meanwhile, what are the education plans of the children of Ivanka and Jared Kushner, who both serve as senior advisors to the president, and the children of Eric and Donald Trump Jr.? If the White House wants to turn school children into political pawns this fall, the Trump family needs to explain their schooling plans. I'm quoting Betsy DeVos here. Well, we've already heard she had to say, and she said, schools must reopen. They must be fully operational. And she specifically rejected the idea of hybrid school schedules. That is, you'll go to school some days, the other days you'll do it by computer. And that would also, that idea is being put out there. That's how they're going to do it in New York City. They're going to stagger the classrooms. So you don't have a full classroom. You'll have half as many kids in the classroom on any given day, and the rest will learn from home, and they'll just alternate. And that seems like a reasonable compromise. And one more side issue to this. I don't know if you heard that the president, in the case of college kids, some kids who are here, exchange students who are over here learning, foreign students who are going to our universities, if their university goes to a virtual presence, the students, that is, will be immediately deported. Why not let them finish their education? Why couldn't they just do it virtually like everybody else? This administration continues to be rabidly, I mean, these people are here legally. They've got the proper documentation that they can study here. But if the school stops being a face-to-face situation, they're deported. There's so many things that I find wrong with this administration. But earlier, we saw Roger Stone. He's seen the light. He's had his come to Jesus moment, quite literally, to hear him tell it. But this was Roger Stone back in, I believe, January. This was a civil deposition. Whole different thing than the criminal charges that he got his slap on the hand for. And this is the now godly Roger Stone. Check out his behavior talking to an attorney who, by the way, this Stone actually ran a campaign for this guy. This is not some wacky liberal. This is a conservative lawyer he's talking to. And that lawyer's name, by the way, is Roger Clayman. Check out this exchange.
I'm not insulting you. Better do it quick.
Before you're disbarred.
Stop. Mr. Clayman. No further questions. This deposition is concluded for now, subject to my going back and moving the court to produce all the documents that we requested.
Subject to your still being admitted to the bar. Please note that for the record. You have nothing. This proves nothing.
That's what you told Mueller, right? You have nothing. That's what your clients argued at the trial.
I'm not going to discuss the criminal case. If you want to keep insulting me, this will be over. You can run back to the judge like a little.
I'm doing what?
If you want to keep insulting me, I will just end this and you go running back to the judge.
Did you just call me
You're acting like one.
No, what is according to you?
What's the point of that?
I'm entitled to know what you meant by
Like a
Come on.
What is it?
You don't know?
Stop.
You're unfamiliar with the term?
You're going to wind up getting sanctioned, Mr. Bishop.
No, you're going to wind up getting sanctioned, Mr. Clayman, like you are in D.C. So let's go.
Let's not do that.
Why not?
Continue.
Not going to be badgered by the
Badgered?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am. You got nothing. You're not going to get anything by interviewing him because it's not true.
If you withheld it, can I?
I haven't withheld it. You have proof I withheld it, do that. But you don't have to do that either.
Oh, we'll look for it.
You can look for it all you want. You'll find nothing. Okay. I doubt this case will get very far because it's a conspiracy theory based on no evidence.
Conspiracies happen, don't they, Mr. Stone?
They do, but in this case, it's a fantasy
Can you
on
ask
your
a
part.
question that's relevant
You're delusional.
to your
You're
lawsuit?
deeply delusional.
Are you saying I'm mentally unstable?
That's not what I said. I said you're delusional.
Stop. Ask a question a lawyer would ask, please.
I am a lawyer.
You could fool me. How come you can't practice in the Southern District? Why won't they let you practice there if you're Mr. Ethical?
I can practice in Southern District.
Only if you attach the judge's order.
I have a case right now.
Stop.
In fact, You're aware that I have a case right now?
I'm not aware that you have a case in that, but I doubt it.
You also released that story to Al Kamen in the Washington Post.
Absolutely, completely false. You have no evidence of that. It's defamatory.
You have.
Stop defaming me.
You have. You
know that I have a following among conservatives. Stop defaming me, Mr. Clayton. Absolutely, completely false. You have no evidence of that. False. Completely false. Categorically false. Completely and totally false. That is entirely false. False. Incorrect. False. That is incorrect. I have never said anything of the kind. That's false, to be clear. Do you have any evidence of that? You have no evidence to the contrary. There was no evidence of that. Do you have any proof? Evidence? Real evidence? Not just wild conjecture. Evidence. And you have no evidence of it. No evidence. There is no evidence of that because it's not true. Proof. Evidence, Larry.
Is that
evidence.
insane?
Proof, Larry. Evidence. Proof. Evidence.
Who talked?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
No, I don't.
You're lying, aren't you, Mr. Stone?
No, you're lying, aren't you,
You're a
Mr.
convicted
Clayton?
liar, aren't you?
Stop.
And you're about to be ousted from the bar.
Stop. Let's take a break. Good time for a break.
Have fun molesting your own children, Larry? I read the court decision.
You read that, huh?
Yeah, I did.
You didn't read anything else.
You.
We off the record? Yes.
Roger Stone did nothing wrong.
Well, he even lets his dogs talk for him. But by the way, I made a couple of mistakes. The attorney's name is Larry Klayman, and that was in February, not January. But anyway, like you know, this guy's got a reputation. He's nasty. He's a dirty trickster. And now all of a sudden, he goes on Hannity and he's thanking God and he's seen the light. But we'll see, because I do believe there's karma. And even though he dodged this bullet, I think there's, you know, I'm not talking wishing death or anything. I'm just saying, I just think for all these guys, they will eventually have their comeuppance, because there's a lot of people getting away with a lot of stuff. And what kills me, if you listen to them talk, they would have you think that all the bad stuff's going on the other side. And as I constantly point out, where are the indictments against Obama? Remember Obamagate? That's all Trump was talking about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Whatever happened to that? I'll tell you what happened to that. There was nothing there. That's what happened to that. And his own attorney general said he wouldn't be looking into Obama or Biden. So there will be, there are going to be some investigations, but it won't involve Obama or Biden. So once again, the president just pulls something out of his Twitter account, and you're supposed to believe it. He threatens to do this, he threatens to do that. The man runs his presidency like a mob boss. So many threats. And some of his statements, he makes these random statements that never come to fruition. And it's sickening. And by the way, I want to say hello to Pam. Hello, Pamela, if I may call you Pam. And Pam says she misses hearing me on Sunday mornings on WKBN. She hopes I return soon. I do too. As I said, still on furlough, and probably the earliest I'd be back would be August or September. I hope I'm back to make my commentary about the last days of the Trump administration. I choked on that. And I guess I just got choked up because I'm really looking forward to that. But it could go either way. I know what the polls are saying, and I say, and I keep saying, do not pay attention to the polls. Keep aggressively pursuing, you know, talking to your friends and voting, all that kind of stuff. I had you know, there are, as I said, that there's this group called Republican Voters Against Trump, because they voted for him, but they had buyer's remorse. They're tired of the theatrics, they're tired of the drama, they're tired of the lies, the tweets, and all that. And I hope there's enough of those people. Independents, he's polling very badly with independents. He's polling very, very badly with women, suburban women in particular. So unless Joe Biden makes some real bad mistake, you know, there's a rumor out there that they won't debate. No, there must be debates. I think Trump wants 4. I think Biden wants 3. There must be debates. I think when you see these two men standing side by side, when you see Joe Biden definitely has the occasional gaffe here or there, but he knows what he's doing. He's been in politics for over 40 years. He spent 8 years as Vice President of the United States, so he's well connected. He knows the foreign dignitaries that he would be dealing with as president. He knows how the system works, as opposed to the current president, who, although he's been on the job almost 4 years now, he still doesn't seem to know how things work. He still says he's going to do this. As Chris Wallace pointed out to DeVos, the president can't just unilaterally defund these schools. Congress, the House in particular, holds the purse strings. So more nonsense out of Donald Trump. But of course, his supporters just eat it up. They believe him over all these other people. And as I've often said, if someone tells you to believe them and only them, you're probably in a cult. Because I think if a person has any integrity, whatever they're telling you will stand up to any kind of opposition. This president doesn't want to hear opposition. This president threatens to shut down networks that report negatively on him. He threatens to sue newspapers. This president acts like no president I've ever seen. If you don't want to be criticized, if you don't want to be criticized or to have your actions questioned, then maybe you should not be the president of the United States. Hopefully that will be changing in November. But as I said, there's no guarantee. Politics is very strange, and there's a lot of people out there when the pollsters come around, particularly with Trump. That's what happened last time. They took a chance. Some people changed their mind at the very last minute, I've heard. And some didn't want to admit they were voting for him because he was such a wild card. And of course, you do have the very, very vocal Trump supporters. But don't assume just because you think this guy's a lunatic and a buffoon that he can't possibly be reelected, because he certainly could be. But things are not looking great right now. And I think that's why you see him trying to get things moving again. The economy, the schools, all that. He's trying to at least create an illusion of normalcy before election time. But I think, to me, this proves that he cares more about his political life than he does about the lives of his fellow Americans. The number here is still 330-595-1600. I would like to hear what you have to say about anything we've been talking about today. Now we're going to take a look at this is an ad from the Lincoln Project talking about Roger Stone.
It's not a campaign. It's a billion-dollar criminal enterprise. Donald Trump says he's running on law and order.
I am the law and order candidate.
Who's he kidding? Trump's campaign manager is a felon. His deputy campaign manager is a felon. His national security advisor, a felon. His foreign policy advisor is a felon. His personal lawyer is a felon. His longtime personal advisor, a felon. Nixon was bad. Trump is worse. Now, Trump saves Roger Stone. Stone lied to cover up Russian involvement in Trump's campaign to protect Donald Trump. 7 felony convictions.
I am the law and order candidate.
Trump is the most corrupt president in U.S. history. There's only one way to end the Trump crime spree. Throw him and his crooks out of office. On November 3rd, vote for justice. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And once again, I always like to point out the Lincoln Project is a group of Republicans. Steve Schmidt, George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, and other people who they've had enough. You've got Republicans who find this president so repugnant that they're telling you to vote for Joe Biden. And this gives me hope. And by the way, these ads are really, they're getting a lot of contributions. They raised $16 million in a week for these ads. In full disclosure, I made a couple of donations myself. Keep it coming, guys, because they're hurting him. These ads are running a lot on television in the D.C. area, so Trump is seeing these ads. Every now and then he tweets about them, so they are getting under his skin, and I think they need to hit this guy hard because he will not hesitate to hit hard when the closer we get to November. Another comment. Randy's watching from North Carolina. Hello, Randy. And Debbie thinks that with Stone, it's treason, period. Well, it's certainly not typical procedure, I'll say that. Presidents can commute sentences. I disagreed with Barack Obama commuting the sentence of Chelsea Manning. She was a spy, and she spent a little time in prison. Then Obama did commute her sentence, and so she is still a convicted felon, but at least she's out of jail. By the way, though, she's been back in jail since Obama got her release. I forgot what that was all about, but you know, some of these people, once they go, they need to stay. And I see Manafort is still there. I don't know if they're going to be able to get him out, but we'll see what happens. But doesn't it bother you, this president who engages in pardoning people, you know, and of course it's not, and another thing I talk about, how he weakens our trust in our institutions. If he loses this election, there's no doubt in my mind that this president will spend his last weeks in office demonizing the Democrats and the media. He will say that the system was rigged. He will question our electoral system. This is the president who, if you'll remember, in Vienna a few years ago, he stood next to Putin, and when he was asked point blank, he trusted Putin over the CIA, the FBI, the NSA. Even Fox News reporters were shocked by that. And yet, he's still there, and he's still got staunch supporters. I say we because I don't pretend where I am on this. I want to see this man gone. And nobody should be offended when I say that. They should be no more offended when I say that than they are when a Limbaugh or a Hannity says they wanted to see Obama gone. This is what commentators do. I am commenting on the news. I'm not a news reader. I'm giving you my read on the news. And I personally believe the best thing for this country, because this man is a divider, because this man is only interested in satisfying his own constituency, not the rest of us. You see how he treats Democratic governors. Hey, they're part of the United States too, Mr. President, but they might not have voted for you, and you treat them differently. He's been merciless with the governor of Michigan. Michigan is having a slight spike, but the Governor Gretchen Whitmer's more rigid stay-at-home orders have been effective in flattening the curve. But we're just out of control. If you look at Texas, Arizona, and Florida, the rates are going through the roof, and it's too late to try to get those people to modify their behavior because you basically let them run free the whole time. But coming up next is, let's see, what is after that? Hold on just a second. This is another thing you need to see. This is, so you've seen a Republican ad against Trump. Well, here's a Democratic ad against Trump by a guy named Joe Biden.
I know so many Americans are suffering loss of a loved one, suffering economic hardship. The country is crying out for leadership that can unite us, leadership that brings us together. That's what the presidency is. The duty to care for all of us, not just those who vote for us, but all of us. But I promise you this, I won't traffic in fear and division. I won't fan the flames of hate. I'll seek to heal the racial wounds that have long plagued our country, not use them for political gain. I'll do my job and I will take responsibility. I won't blame others. You know, I've said from the outset of this election that we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. What we believe, and maybe most importantly, who we want to be, it's all at stake. We stand together, finally as one America, we'll rise stronger than we were before. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Well, that's funny. So do I. I'm Mo Ray, and we are coming up on the end here. If anybody would like to get a call in, there's still time at 330-595-1600. That's 330-595-1600. And I would please ask you, tell your like-minded friends to check us out, either in person or they can check out the archives, and let them know that somebody is looking at this from their perspective. It's not just, I know here locally, talk radio has turned into exclusively a right-wing operation, and I see people commenting on that all the time. What about the other side? Well, that's why I'm here. But Speaking of the other side, this is why we can't settle this thing. These people, and this is in Florida, seems like everything crazy is happening in Florida. Maybe this is why things are spiking in Florida. Here are some militant anti-maskers, and check out this video.
What law is being broken? It's wrong what you're doing. This is America. This is America.
You're not a communist state.
This is not communist China. You want to call me selfish for not wearing a mask? I want to say to you, all the people calling me selfish, you're the one who's trying to force me a medical procedure so you can feel more safe.
The second that. Listen to this. Stay in your house.
You have a right to stay in your house.
You have every
right to wear a
you
mask
have a right
if you
to
want.
stay. Shut
Don't
that
shove it
window.
on me.
Shut
You
that
have
window.
every right.
Shut
You
that
have
window.
every right to stay in that
You
house.
have a right to stay in your house.
Stay in your house, Karen.
Shut the
Stay in
window,
your house.
honey. Shut it.
This is the kind of thing we're up against. We're up
This is
against.
a person in her own home. She's allowed to stay in her home. Nobody is coming into her home telling her, "Be quiet, honey. You're in your home. Shut the window, dear."
In all honesty, we don't feel like we're moving anywhere positive in the right direction. We felt good for a while. We were able to close down the COVID ICU. We had all the COVID patients in one floor. We felt like we had our handle on it, that we were going to be able to deal with this. We knew it would be a chronic issue, but we had our 24-bed COVID floor. It was going to be all we needed. And then this came. And then we had to open up a second floor and a third floor. Now we're into a fourth and fifth floor. And we don't see it getting any better. It's just disheartening because the selfishness of it versus the selflessness of my staff and the people in this hospital who are putting themselves at risk. And I got COVID from this. We're putting ourselves at risk, and other people aren't willing to do anything and in fact go the other way and be aggressive to promote the disease. It's really hard. It's not just affecting the elderly, it is affecting everyone, and clearly it's the younger people who are going out and not being safe. A simple mask decreases transmission rate from 75% to 1% if everybody's wearing masks.
I'll never understand it, and I think it's completely selfish, as the doctor says, but that's where we are. I was just on Facebook. This woman in Australia says she feels sorry for us over here. She says, we don't have that kind of thing happening here. And I said, I feel sorry for us too. And you can see that the problems start at the top when you have a president, as I said, at the height of a pandemic, he's retweeting the goofy conspiracy theories of Chuck Woolery. He hasn't talked to Fauci in 3 weeks. He makes you wonder, what the heck's going on? It's really ridiculous. And the fact that some of you can still support this behavior that could affect you and your family, and now that school is on the horizon, you and your kids, this president is not doing what's in the best interest of the people of the United States regarding this. He's too busy patting himself on the back because he shut down travel in China in January, and that's pretty much about all he's done. I'm only slightly exaggerating that. We're going to go a little long just for this. I want to run something positive because there's been so much bad news. And the police have been in the news a lot lately and not always in a positive fashion. Well, you know what? Actually, that wasn't the one, but let's go with this one. I'll save that other one for another day. This will be a good way to go out. This is very close. Canal Fulton, I believe, or is it? No, Port Clinton. This is where this happened, not too far from here. And this was another mask skeptic. By all the people that they interviewed or anything I've read about this person, a very good man, but he's no longer with us because he chose not to wear a mask.
Well, tonight we are reminded how vicious and how tragic coronavirus can be. A local Army vet just died from COVID-19 at 37 years old, Tiffany.
Hard to believe. Our Kelly Kennedy spoke with those who knew him, and tonight they have a warning for others.
Richard Rose was only 37 years old when he died, and he was born and raised right here in Port Clinton. Now I'm told Rose did not take this virus seriously. So now his loved ones are hoping that this tragedy will make others realize no one is invincible. Those who knew 37-year-old Richard Rose describe him as kind, funny, and caring. His family says he was very active in helping homeless vets and in preventing veteran suicide. The Port Clinton man served in the Army for 9 years and did 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He died at his home from complications related to COVID-19 on the 4th of July.
We were blown away. You know, you hear about this virus and you don't expect it to affect people, younger people like ourselves.
Nick Conley has called Rose a friend for the past 5 years. They met through a shared love of video games. He is crushed that he lost his friend to this virus. But he's also hurt by something Rose posted on Facebook back in April. That post has now been shared more than 10,000 times. It reads, "Let's make this clear. I'm not buying a mask. I've made it this far by not buying into that damn hype."
Rick is getting slaughtered online right now for his decision that he made not to wear a mask, and that's not right. You know, we should still be compassionate, whether we agree with someone's beliefs or not. Someone has passed away. We should have some compassion towards that.
Rose's family tells me he tested positive for COVID-19 on July 1st and died just 3 days later. I'm told Rose had no known pre-existing health conditions.
It's horrible that we lost Rick, but the even more tragic part of that is who else became infected because of the actions that he chose.
Do you feel like your friend's death, though, should serve as a warning, especially to younger people, to take this virus seriously?
100%, and that's exactly why I made a post that I made showing people that I know a lot of people that haven't met someone that they know of that have been diagnosed with the virus, and I wanted people to see it was real. And my hope is that people will see that this does happen and people will be more cautious.
I did speak with Rose's brother and sister. They didn't want to talk on camera, but they did want everyone to know that their brother was a good person and he helped a lot of people during his short time on Earth. Reporting in Port Clinton, Kelly Kennedy, 19 News.
And that's all I can say. This is real, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. I hope you can convince some skeptics to be a little more serious about that. There are some people you're never going to change their mind, and you need to stay away from them so that you don't get infected by them. There is nothing else. It's just selfish. It's just dangerous. You know, I saw that they found a squirrel, and did you see that, Joe? A squirrel in Colorado with the bubonic plague. If we're ever dealing with the bubonic plague, millions are going to die in this country because of these stupid attitudes. And it's all preventable. Well, not all, but let's just say a lot of this is very preventable if we would just modify our behavior. But I want to thank you for behaving well today. I want to thank you, Joe, for making it a good show.
Certainly.
Running a little long, but I want to say, hey, be careful out there. Take care. I'm Mo Ray saying, I'll see you Thursday. And as I always say, keep your eyes on the prize.